Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I am doing my reading statistics of 2019. I will make this a very short video because I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about. But let's get into it anyway. So in 2019 I read 94 books, which is decidedly less than my 148 that I read in 2018. However, I was working a full-time job and taking several trips as well as just sort of trying to find a balance. So I'm not actually upset with having read 94 books. Many of those were series, and I finished a couple too, which was fantastic. Let's get into the stats. I realize that I'm wearing a different top and I have different makeup than the rest of my stats video. I forgot to do this when I filmed the first part of it, so here we are. I have this broken down into multiple different categories. We have fantasy, historical fiction, nonfiction, fiction, graphic novels, which includes just children's books, science fiction, classics, and poetry. And then within that I have it broken down between YA, middle grade, and adult. So, as far as poetry, I read all of one poetry book in 2019. I read 6 classics. I mean, all adult classics, but classics. I read 6 YA science fictions and 4 adult science fiction. I read 3 middle grade novels, which included 1 children's book. I read 1 what I would consider literary fiction, which was The Overstory, which I finished in 2019, back in January. I read 14 adult nonfictions, which I'm pretty happy with. I read 2 YA historical fiction, 3 middle grade historical fiction, and 10 adult historical fiction, which does include 1 romance, because I read historical romance because I read a lot of historical stuff. In case you haven't been here long, I don't really like contemporary stuff, it's too modern. And then the last category, fantasy, I read 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 27 YA fantasy, 8 middle grade fantasy, and 9 adult fantasy. I can't do math. I'm not mad about it. I would like to read, I think, more poetry and definitely more historical fiction. I read a lot of fantasy last year. However, I did get a lot of nonfiction in comparatively, which I'm pretty happy with. And considering this year I have a whole bunch of nonfiction books out from the library already, once I finish those, I think I will have already had my nonfiction for last year beat. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with that. The specific stats that I broke down are the authors. So I have women of color, white women, men of color, and white men, as far as who wrote what. And obviously because some of them are series, I didn't count the authors for each book. I just sort of combined them into one because they're still the same author. As far as authors of color who were women, there were 9 of them, which I do believe has gone down from last year, so I need to work on reading more diversely again, but I'll get there. I read 4 authors of color who were men. I read 18 authors who were white men, which is not a small number. But the largest number I read was the 35 female authors who were white. I read a lot of female authors, apparently, which is something that I guess I know in the back of my head ever since Katie told me about it, but it's not something that I really realize or consciously think about until I go to do this video. Like I said, I clearly need to work on reading more own voices, which I would very much like to do, but my reading has been and always will be apparently dominated by female authors, which I am absolutely okay with. That's about all I have for this video. Like I said, it's going to be a pretty short video. I don't think stats videos are usually very long, but if you have any recommendations for own voices books, let me know down in the comments below. I'm always looking for new recommendations regardless. So I read a lot of females. Yay! That's all I have, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.